Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
8:07 now as we fly through this final hour of this program and the week's worth of programs for that matter. If you missed anything this week or this morning, please subscribe to our podcast. It's O'Connor and Company on every platform you get your podcasts. It's our radio program, but in podcast form, because people tell me they like podcasts. So sure, we're on board. You can get it. Usually we post it a couple of hours after the program. All right, coming up in 30 minutes, we'll speak with James Fishback. I've been following him on social media and on cable news hits. He's got a really interesting position on our financial world, and he's even suing Jerome Powell and the Fed over interest rates. We'll get to that. That's Patrice Onwuka on this Friday. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning. Happy Friday, everybody. We made it.
Joining us right now is Margaret Olohan from the Daily Wire. She's there at the White House almost daily now, and or traveling with the president for that matter. Really fun watching you, Mary Margaret, as this whole new golden era unfolds, and you get a front row seat to it. Are you enjoying yourself?
I am, and good morning to both of you. It's great to be here, and so much fun to be covering the Trump White House in this age of new media.
Yes. Well, and the Trump White House is about to go through quite a bit of a transformation. Here's President Trump yesterday speaking about it. This is cut 16.
We've been planning it for a long time. They've wanted a ballroom at the White House for more than 150 years, but there's never been a president that was good at ballrooms. I'm really good. In fact, I looked at one that we just built in Turnberry in Scotland, and it's incredible. We're good at building. I'm good at building things, and we'll get it built quickly and on time. It'll be beautiful, top of the line.
I'm good at building things. It'll be done quickly, top of the line, and on time. All right, so then immediately Chuck Schumer, down the street at the Capitol, made an unfounded allegation. Listen.
Here's even something more confounding. Some breaking news. Just now, the White House announced construction of a $200 million White House ballroom that will begin in September. A $200 million ballroom. Where'd this money come from? Did Congress appropriate it? I don't think so. It's almost like Doge was never about waste at all.
Mary Margaret Olohan, let's get to the facts. Unlike Chuck Schumer, we actually deal in facts here and not wild speculation and unfounded charges. So where did the money come from, Mary Margaret?
Well, if Chuck Schumer had done any research whatsoever, he would know that the president and other donors are actually funding this project themselves. And that was something that the White House said in their release when they announced all of these new changes yesterday. They said the president, along with other quote-unquote patriot donors, are committed to funding the project, which is really interesting, I think, because, President Trump, like he said, is a builder. He spent his entire life building things. He's very devoted to making them beautiful in the style, of his other buildings, of appropriate architecture, depending on the place, whether it's Mar-a-Lago or New York City. He's very, very interested. If you look into his background, he pays so much attention. He's on the ground being part of these different structures. So it makes sense that he'd be really invested in the ballroom itself at the White House, and that he would care a lot about matching the integrity of the building and the architectural structure. Yeah. And, this specific ballroom is supposed to be almost identical to the White House itself, though it's going to be a little bit separated from the main building. But it's going to be classical architecture. It's going to be in a traditional style so that it's a beautiful ballroom to host visitors at the White House, as presidents have long wished for. They've never had a ballroom space like this at the White House before. And their current capacity only really allows for, I believe, around 200 guests, whereas this new ballroom will allow, I believe, 650 guests, which is a big difference.
Mary Margaret, I'm looking at the images that you shared on your X account and of what the renderings of what the White House ballroom will look like, and they are stunning. They are very beautiful. And I like the idea of more events being hosted by the White House. Do you have a sense now? Groundbreaking begins in September. Do you have a sense of how long it's going to take for it to be completed, and how we can get on the guest list to dance? I've already promised Hans von Spakovsky a dance. My first dance has to be with my husband. I want to reserve one for President Trump if I ever get that honor. But when can we expect the invitations to go out?
We're thinking full-on Regency era Pride and Prejudice ball. Let's go.
Larry, I would be there. That sounds like a lot of fun. No, this is really exciting. I actually think one of the most interesting things about this is that the architect is James McCreary, who's a DC-based architect. I've met him. He's a very wonderful person to chat with. He's also the architect of some really beautiful Catholic churches around the country, which, this is a rarer and rarer thing to find someone that's willing to embrace traditional classical architecture. Anyone who's been in a church over the past, anytime recently, will tell you that there's such a big difference between modern architecture and classical traditional architecture. Just on a very basic level, if you go to a Catholic church, it's very clear whether the architect was trying to lift your mind to God versus just, trying to have some very modern or, basic faith elements. And McCreary, who's going to be designing this ballroom, is really interested in traditionalism and symbolism. And if you look at some of his past comments on this topic, it's very clear that he cares more about the beauty of it and the tradition rather than some of these more modern concepts. So I'm really excited to see how this turns out. I really like the pictures that the White House put out. I think that they match the integrity of the White House very well, and so this will probably look very, very fluid and make a lot of sense in the structure that we're looking at.
The floor-to-ceiling arched windows are absolutely majestic with a view out to Washington, D.C. It's a great look. Will the footprint of the White House change at all? This is going to be in the place of the East Room, is that right?
Yes. So they talked about this at the White House press briefing yesterday. A bunch of people had questions on it. So it's going to be on the same site where the East Wing currently sits. And they talked about how the East Wing was constructed in 1902, and it's been renovated and changed many times. They added a second story, I think, in around the 1940s. And so this will be a little bit separated from the main building, but it's going to be largely on that site. I believe currently the office of the First Lady is in the East Wing and a couple other offices. So Caroline Leavitt at the press briefing said that they're going to be moved for a little while the construction's going on, and then ultimately things will be back to their proper places.
Also, people are saying it's donors who are making it. Under what sort of financial body do the donations come in? Are they setting up a separate foundation to cover these expenses? Will there be a paper trail? I can understand people saying, hey, wait, hold on. If somebody gives a bunch of money for this, Trump's ballroom, will they expect a quid pro quo? What will the paper trail be? That sort of thing.
That's a great question, Larry. I'll have to ask the White House that, because I'm interested in that as well. But I think it speaks a lot to the president's interest in building this project because, Chuck Schumer would like to say that this is some kind of, effort by the president to make the American taxpayer pay for a project that's going to benefit him. I think the White House would argue that this is the president and his administration, making the White House more beautiful and better for the American public and for generations to come. This is an addition to the White House that I think maybe in 100 years people will be visiting, looking at this beautiful ballroom, and some tour guide will be saying, yes, President Trump added this beautiful ballroom, amid controversy from the left, because he thought it would be a great addition to the White House. And now look at how many historic events have happened here. So, it's one of those things that might cause a little controversy right now, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a beautiful addition, and I think that it'll be a historic one as well.
Really quickly, do we think it'll be wrapped up before the end of the president's term, or because I wouldn't trust the next person if it's not a Republican to continue the renovation if it's not done before he leaves?
I would be very surprised if it wasn't wrapped up before the end of the president's term. I think he wants to have events there as soon as possible.
Okay.
And J.D. Vance's inaugural ball, of course.
Well, there you go.
Just saying. Our next Catholic president. Am I right, Mary Margaret? Am I right?
You never know. You never know.
Stay objective.
Or Marco Rubio.
They're both Catholic. It works.
That's right.
Thanks, Mary Margaret.
Thank you,
Have a great
Mary Margaret.
weekend.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Reminds me of an old joke my brother used to tell all the time. He would put
that?
on his pants, and if they were a little too tight, he'd say, "Geez, these pants are like a cheap hotel." And I'd say, "What do you mean?" He'd say, "Well, there's no ballroom."
That's really bad. That is not funny. That is not funny, Larry.
When I was 8 years old and my big brother told me that joke, I thought it was the funniest thing. Kamala Harris was on Stephen Colbert yesterday. That's right. A loser with no future was interviewed by a loser with no future.
Now that's funny.
Kamala Harris was asked who the leader of the Democrat Party is, and you would think she would say, well, Stephen, I am. I was the nominee for president, and until somebody else is the nominee, I speak for our party, and I'm the leader after all.
I was second in command for 4 years.
Yes, I was vice president, and I'm a woman, and I'm a minority, and I'm this, and I'm that, and instead she delivered a humbling, bumbling, mumbling word salad. Take a listen.
You're not running for office right now. Yeah. You're stepping away from that life right now. Who's leading the Democratic Party? I'm just curious.
There are lots of leaders. And
there's generally a leader of the Democratic Party. You know, like, oh, that's the leader of the Democratic Party. Who comes to mind?
I think there are a lot of, I'm not going to go through names because then I'm going to leave somebody out and then I'm going to hear about it. But let me say this. I think it is a mistake for us who want to figure out how to get out and through this and get out of it to put it on the shoulders of any one person. It's really on all of our shoulders.
There you go. Word salad leading to applause, which
Wait, but Larry, can I just say one thing, one observation? This is just like when on The View they asked her what she would do differently from Joe Biden, and she blew it. This was a setup question, and she blew it. This was her moment to make her pitch. She didn't even have to say myself. She could just talk about her accomplishments and what she brings to the table, and she could have owned that question and owned the stage, and she blew it. She misses the moments for her to really have a viral moment. I don't know how she does it, but there you go.
She then goes on, and understand something. She was the Attorney General of California, elected official. She was the Senator from California, elected official. She was the Vice President of the United States, elected official. Then she was the nominee. She didn't actually have to win an election, but she was the nominee for president. So by all intents and purposes, every single... Oh, and before that, she was the district attorney for San Francisco, elected official.
Yeah.
So she has been part of the system, right? The electoral system, the holding office, and for her entire adult career. And now she decides that she's going to fight the system because she doesn't want to be a part of the system because the system is broken. The system that put her in power. Here, take a listen. I can't make it up.
Recently, I made the decision that for now, I don't want to go back in the system. I think it's broken. I think there's so much, there are so many good people who are public servants, who do such good work, teachers and firefighters and police officers and nurses and scientists.
The barking seals clapping at scientists.
And so it's not about them, but, I believe, and I always believed, that as fragile as our democracy is, our systems would be strong enough to defend our most fundamental principles. And I think right now that they're not as strong as they need to be, and I just don't want to, for now, I don't want to go back in the system. I want to travel the country. I want to listen to people. I want to talk with people. And I don't want it to be transactional where I'm asking for their vote.
No, instead I'm asking for them to buy my book. But that's nothing transactional about that. Understand something. When they say the system is broken and she's even flirting with the idea that democracy is broken in some way, it's all because the wrong person won, you see. The system is just fine as long as she wins. But the second she doesn't win, it's not her fault. And it's not because the other guy was better or the people liked him better. No. Now the system is broken and we have to upend the system. It's funny how that works.
I mean, it always works that way. The system wasn't broken enough when it didn't put her, when it just put her on the top of the ticket without one, vote for her in a primary. Maybe is that the brokenness? Is that the undermining of democracy she's talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe she can answer that for us. But when you hear, and we all know the buzzwords, folks, when you hear, I'm going to go listen across America to listen to the people, that is speak for, I'm running for president. I'm going to be hitting up all of the major early primary states, to have town halls and to put my flag out there, a stake in the ground that I am running. Clear the deck. That's what she's saying.
It is 8:23.
Making sense of your world.
There are a lot of things that really tick me off.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Making sense of the news.
All right, coming up, we've got James Fishback. He's an investor and CEO of the investment firm Azoria. He's suing the Fed over interest rates. We're going to talk to him about this and more. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 8:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
And it's 8:37. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company. 30 minutes now before you hand it off to Chris Plant. I'm Larry O'Connor with Patrice Onwuka. Good Friday to you, Patrice.
Yes, good Friday to you too, Larry.
I've been following this guy, James Fishback, recently quite a bit. His social media game is strong, as well as his traditional cable news appearances, and he's a very wise man. So, Patrice, take it away.
Absolutely. James, welcome.
Oh, good morning, Patrice. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. Well, I mean, this week I think we've all been watching to see what the Federal Reserve would have done on interest rates, and generally, folks expected, economists expected that that the Fed would keep the rates steady, and they did, despite I think plenty of evidence, economic data that suggests the economy is strong, the labor market is not cratering, and inflation has moderated significantly. So there was a good case to be made for the Fed to lower rates, and they did not. And now you've announced just a day or two ago that you are doing something on behalf of all of American workers. Share this with our audience.
Yeah, I'm happy to. The thing to remember here, Patrice, is that inflation is now at a 4-year low. Yes, this level of interest rates, this high, was appropriate when we had inflation of 8 to 9% a couple years ago under President Biden, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, after the post-COVID stimulus engendered this large wave of inflation. This level of rates that we still have is not appropriate for the fact that inflation has averaged 1.8% since the new administration took office. And so my investment firm, it's called Azoria, we sued Jerome Powell in federal court last week in an effort to bring some real transparency and accountability. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you own a home or not yet and you're currently renting, you deserve to know what is said in those Federal Reserve meetings. You deserve to know what is actually going into their equation that's keeping interest rates at 20-year highs and mortgage rates at 25-year highs. And so there's something called the Government in the Sunshine Act that Congress passed in 1976 that says that any federal agency, including the Fed, Patrice, has to meet within public observation, and those transcripts have to become readily available. And so we're taking Powell to court for the simple reason that every American deserves the dignity of knowing what the government is doing to them and the people they care about.
I love this. I do. Nothing like a lawsuit to get people to step up and fix their behavior, let's say. But what is the precedent for this sort of thing? Everybody talks about the independence of the Fed, and yet we pay for their salaries. We pay for their budget. We're paying for this, $3 billion renovation of their palatial offices, and so I mean they may be independent, I suppose. They're not. And by the way, the chair needs to be confirmed. All the members of the Fed are confirmed by the Senate, so they're not really independent, are they?
Right. That word independence gets thrown around. What it really means, Larry, is we want to be independent of accountability, oversight, and transparency. That's the issue here. I mean, right? It's not.
By the way, so do I. If I may just,
Right.
I would love that independence.
Right. And so, yes, of course, we all, Republican, Democrat, we all want the Fed to be independent of politics. We don't want Senator Elizabeth Warren, as she did in September of last year, telling Powell to cut rates by 75, even though the economy didn't warrant that. And we don't want a Republican president, one way or the other, making unjustified demands of the Federal Reserve. But I got to tell you, Donald Trump's economic analysis at the Fed is dead right. He understands that with inflation now at a 4-year low, inflation having come in better than expected 5 consecutive times so far this year, inflation that is now below the Fed's target, it doesn't make sense, Patrice, to keep interest rates this high. Now, why should we care about this? Interest rates, mortgage, why should we care? Because 360,000 fewer Americans got mortgages this year versus this time 4 years ago in President Trump's. So 360,000 people who are being denied the ability to get a home. If you can't get a mortgage, you can't get a home. If you can't get a home, you can't get married. If you can't get married, you can't have kids. And so this is literally a life-altering decision that the Federal Reserve is making, and none of us have a say in it. And we're not saying we need to go to the meetings and have a public comment session, although we'd love to see that. What we're saying is we deserve to know what is actually being said. The current setup, Patrice, is we will know. We're lucky to know what happens in that meeting when the Federal Reserve releases the transcripts, not in July 25 or July 26. We will get the transcripts of what was said in this week's meeting, I kid you not, in January 2031.
Oh, goodness.
And they justify that. They justify that with, quote, we don't want politics to interfere with our independence. Well, when you're allowed to hide for 5 years, we don't know if those meetings had political considerations. And I'm sorry, Jerome Powell is not beyond reproach. Jerome Powell is not somehow an apolitical, nonpartisan being when he comes out right before the 2024 election, cuts rates by 50 points, and what looks like a desperate attempt to help Vice President Harris. Oh, and now inflation is lower today than it was then. Every economic model says rates should be lowered, and he doesn't want to do a darn thing. This isn't just about President Trump. It's about the 360,000 Americans who deserve to get a mortgage. They've done everything right. They put their head down. They worked hard. They saved up. But Jerome Powell can't get off his anti-Trump high horse and do the right thing.
We're speaking with James Fishback. You're head of the investment firm Azoria. You're suing Jerome Powell. You made an interesting point about what President Trump could do when it comes to Powell himself. You know, we're not expecting President Trump to fire him, but what could he do that you think would change the markets and really impact the bond markets, pretty much every market that's having it, that's deciding, you know, what's going on with the different rates, the mortgage rates, et cetera?
Yes, absolutely. So for background, I was an interest rate derivatives trader for the last 10 years. So I've watched every single Fed meeting since 2011, read every single Fed transcript that's publicly available through 2019. This was my full-time job. So I've thought a lot about how the Fed shapes market expectations. And I understand the urge, despite everything that we've said, I understand the urge to want to fire Jerome Powell. He's a little scoundrel, but I don't want President Trump to take the bait because I don't want them to have another pretext to try to impeach him. I don't want there to be a long, drawn-out fight with the Supreme Court. There's a very simple solution, Patrice, and that is for President Trump on Monday morning to announce who will replace Jerome Powell. The second he does that, Jerome Powell loses all of his influence and credibility in the eyes of the bond market. Everyone, every trader, every investment firm will look to Scott Bessent and will reprice Treasury rates lower and mortgage rates lower accordingly. Here's a perfect analogy, I think, to think about it. When Joe Biden was technically still the president after Trump won in November of 24, no one really wanted to talk to Biden. There was no world leader who was clamoring for a meeting, no CEO who wanted to spend time with him. Everybody rushed down to Mar-a-Lago. I was down there. Everyone rushed down there. And the reason why is because even though Biden was technically the president, Trump was really the one who had credibility and legitimacy in the eyes of the public. Same thing happens here. Even though Powell would still technically be the Fed chair through May 2026, what Scott Bessent could do is he could become the shadow Fed chair. He would give speeches all over the country. He would tell the bond market, when I take office in May of 26, I'm going to cut those rates and buy a lot. And the bond market, because it's a market based on forward-looking expectations, Patrice, it will have no other option but to mechanically price those expectations. And that lowers mortgage rates and treasury rates, not in May, it lowers them today because the market is an amalgamation of all future rates at the current present point.
Fantastic.
James Fishback, Azoria Partners. And by the way, I mean, I've been watching a lot of what you've been doing. You're fighting the good fight against the ideological monopoly that the left has in our public schools, and you're trying to push for viewpoint diversity. And did I read this right? You've got a publicly traded fund now, an exchange fund, and you're donating 5% of your personal profits to pro-life pregnancy centers across the country?
I am, and I'm proud to do it. I'm proud to play a small part in this movement. The movement that says that every life matters, that the preborn are the most vulnerable among us, and no mother should be pulled aside and said, now is not the right time for you to be pregnant. No mom, no teenager should be pulled aside and say, now is not the right time for you to have a baby. Our communities, our faith-based centers are stepping up in a way that the government hasn't to ensure that every mom, every expecting mom has the resources she needs. That fund that you mentioned, Larry, is actually the first of its kind. It's an anti-DEI ETF. The ticker is SPXM. And the way it works is it buys the same companies in your S&P 500 ETF, except the 38, Starbucks, Nike, Airbnb, and others that have explicit DEI quotas that we have found hurt stock performance. And so you get to own the same S&P 500 stocks in the same exact weightings, with the exception of the stocks that are holding you back and doing the wrong things. I mean, to tell you the truth, Patrice, I don't see how a company can outperform or can do well in the market if it's hiring on race and gender versus skill and merit. And so the Azoria Meritocracy ETF, the ticker there is SPXM, Patrice. It just invests in companies that hire on merit. It's our anti-DEI ETF. I got to tell you, we launched this thing 3 weeks ago. We just hit $40 million yesterday. So people are really taking it in.
Congratulations.
Impressive figure, James Fishback. But don't be a stranger. We want to talk to you again. Good stuff, man.
Thanks, James. This is great.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Patrice. God bless. Have a great weekend.
It's 8:47 now. That's a wrap. Patrice, you have a great weekend.
You too, Larry.
Here comes your friend and mine, and pretty much everybody's friend, Chris Plant. Christopher?
I'm really a friend to the world, aren't I?
Yes, you are.
Not like John Brennan. Absolutely. Not like John Brennan. I'm not a communist. I'm not a traitor. I'm not, a Democrat. I'm none of these things. Over breakfast this morning, my best girl and I hanging out and talking about John Brennan. I want to talk about John. He's a communist. Remember when he called President Trump a traitor?